Hey folks, how are you doing? Dove Baron, full Monty leadership here in the park, down by the water. Let's see if I can show you that whole. See, the park down by the water. Pretty nice day here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Just thought I'd whip out for a couple of minutes and share some stuff with you. Particularly about why you might have been worshipping the wrong God. Is it possible? I wonder. All right. Did you see the movie The Stepford Wives? I was thinking about that this afternoon. Did you see the movie The Stepford Wives? If you remember that movie, during that movie, what were all those wives like? Remember, they were all beautifully dressed, all looked good, their hair was perfect, they were unshakable, nothing upset them, there was no mood, they were always ready to please, you know what that means. You know, dinner was always made, there was cookies, and all that kind of stuff was going on constantly. Remember that? And there was no room for any other feeling than this pleasantry. Now think of another movie. I'm going to go through 3 movies here. Another movie called Pleasantville. Maybe some of you remember that movie. That was a movie about a place that was black and white. Great film. This black and white world where everything was black and white, nothing was in color, and the reason for it was that everybody was black and white. They were tones of gray, actually. They weren't even black and white, they were tones of gray. Nobody was really had any strong feelings about anything, and it was just, you know, it was all very pleasant, hence the name Pleasantville. So, now, let's bring it to the third movie. The third movie actually was a book by H.G. Wells called 1984. 1984. Now, of course, we passed 1984 more than 30 years ago, but the fictitious 1984 was a place where everybody behaved themselves, where orgasm was illegal, where it was illegal to be upset or frustrated or angry about anything, and everybody had to conform and everybody had to play nice. Interesting, huh? 3 movies all about the same subject, although set in different contexts, in different arenas, but really all about the same thing, that it's not okay for you, me, the people of that world, to have other feelings or other emotions than the prescribed feelings or emotions. We live in a world right here, you know, you think that there's a lot of freedom and, you know, that you can do what you want. But I've said so many times before, even on these broadcasts, that people think that they're choosing, but very often they're not choosing at all. They're just acting out of some autonomous, try that again. Wow, borrowed this mouth. Some automatic brain ingrained behavior, so that there only seems to be a choice, and the choice is the right choice or the wrong choice. But then we have to examine, well, what is the right choice and what is the wrong choice? And all too often we don't really know what that is, because somebody else is deciding what it is. We got these ideas about the truth and lies. We got the ideas about what's morally correct and what's morally incorrect. And of course we can put a lot of that on the Judeo-Christian world that we grew up in, the Abrahamic world, whether that's Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, or many of the other faiths. And I've talked about this in a very recent video that I did, when I talked about tolerance and how we tolerate things. And I asked you to, actually challenged you to take a look at what is it that you tolerate, because what you tolerate is actually creating a lot of your pain. So in the Judeo-Christian Abrahamic world, you're taught that it's virtuous, that if you're going to be a good follower of that faith, that you need to be tolerant. Now, I'm not talking about supporting hate crimes or thinking that people should be, you know, that you should any of those things. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about getting rid of personal tolerance, getting rid of the things in your life that you put up with, that you tolerate, that you tell yourself you're being a good Christian, a good Jew, a good Muslim, a good whatever, because you put up with it. That doesn't make you a good Christian, Jew, Muslim, whatever it is. It doesn't make you a good anything to put up with shit. In fact, it actually makes you a bad something. Now, here's where I want to get to this with you, and where I said you might be following the wrong God. If you think about the great leaders, even the great religious leaders, the great political leaders, the great business leaders of the world, who are they? Are they the people who were the good people? Are they the people who were tolerant people? No, they're not. Every one of those stories that we've been told about these great leaders is reliant upon the fact that actually they were not willing to tolerate. In fact, many of them, I would say, for a period of time, chose to worship another god, a Greek god that a Greek god that I fictitiously made up, of course, but a Greek god that I like to call Pistophius. And until you get to support and worship Pistophius, until you get in touch with your pistification, until you get in touch with what really upsets you, you'll find your own pissosity, there's likely not to be any changes. So if you want to look at the world and how the world has changed, it has changed by people who are willing to not tolerate, people who are willing to get pissed off about something. So now let me circle this back into something else that I've spoken about before, and I've been asked a lot about. People say to me, Dov, how do I find my passion? And I'm going to tell you, you will never, ever, ever find your passion until you are willing to get in touch with your pissed offness, until you're willing to find out what it is that you might be pissed off about, until you're willing to step into your own frustration, your own anger, your own what it is that you shouldn't be tolerating, you will never find your passion. Now here's why. The place of your passion within your being energetically is exactly the same place as the place of your anger. But you don't accept your anger. No, it's not okay. I'm not allowed to be angry. I got to be nice. I got to be tolerant. I got to be a good whatever it is. And the challenge with that is that that's exactly where your passion is. If you want to find your passion, find out what pisses you off. Find out what really upsets you. Find out what it is that you've got to get in touch with, that you would love to change in this world, within yourself, within your own situation. What is it that upsets you? Give yourself permission to go to the pissed off. Because again, coming back to religion for a minute, think about the great religious leaders. They are the ones who got upset. I'll give you a couple of examples. Because we like to think of these religious beings as being these perfect beings, and we aspire to be just like them. We want to be, chosen by God, and we want to be so kind and generous and caring and loving and virtuous and all those things. Yes, be all those things. But hold on, let's take a look at the truth of the stories. There's this bloke, you might have heard of him, Jesus, I think his name was in Spanish, Jesus, supposedly, not saying it's true, not saying it's false, but supposedly the Son of God. Now, that's about as near to pure as you can get. In the New Testament, there's a story about this bloke called Jesus who gets really pissed off with the money changers who are ripping people off outside of the temple, and he turns over all the tables. He got in touch with Pistophius. He found his own pissosity in order to change things. Then there's another guy, I don't know what his name was, let's try Moses. Moses, he killed an Egyptian. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and kill people, but, you've got to get in touch with that fire. You've got to find that place within you that will get you in touch with your anger. There's nothing wrong with your anger. We've made it wrong. We've made it bad. But you know what? It sets you up for failure in so many ways, because you need that fire. You need that passion in your life, and that will come from getting in touch with the things that infuriate you. Yes, you've got to get in touch with what it is, because a lot of people's tolerance and virtuousness is nothing more than bullshit that they pile on top. As they say where I come from, shit with sugar icing on is still shit. So they put all this sugar icing on top and they make it seem like they're very good and kind. And when I meet them, so often there are people who are filled with freaking rage. Rage. And that rage, here's the deal about it, that rage becomes what I call the violent silence. Well, what I mean by the violent silence, it means it's held within themselves, and it becomes violent within. It's silent to the world, but it's loud, it's screaming of self-hatred and self-loathing and all those things, and I shouldn't have these feelings, so I'm a bad person. That's the violent silence that destroys people and will destroy you. So take a look at the things that you're tolerating. Give yourself permission to get in touch with the things that you shouldn't be tolerating. It doesn't serve you. And eventually, for many people, it becomes the rage, because the violent silence becomes the explosive rage. In a recent shooting in Orlando, which I'm sure you're aware of, a guy went in and killed 49 people. Where did he kill them? In a gay club, LGBT community. Murdered them. Now, some like to tell you that that was a religious thing, that was part of a terrorist act. No, it fucking wasn't. I'll tell you what it was. It was the violent silence got so big that it became explosive rage. This is a man, by the words of his own ex-wife, who said that this is a guy who definitely was an in-the-closet gay person, but couldn't live with that. Why? Probably because he was shamed, made wrong for his sexuality, for how he felt about other people of his own gender. And so he buried that, repressed it. And here's the deal. If you take a glass jar and you push sand in it, now sand is not explosive, and you push sand in it and you push sand in it till it's full. Now you put a pressure lid on it and you keep adding sand to it under more and more pressure. Will that glass blow? Yes. Was there an explosive in there? No. The explosive was the pressure. The violent silence becomes the violent explosion. It becomes the explosive rage. I'm telling you, the world is changed by people who are in touch with that, who don't repress it, who don't deny it, who say there's something has to change, and I'm willing to step up and make the change, and I'm willing to look pissed off. In fact, I will go so far as to tell you that I think we need more pissed off people in the world. Yes, I'm in favor of love, and I'm very loving and affectionate and caring, but we need more people who are willing to get in touch with that pissed off part of themselves so that we can shift the world in the way that we want to shift it. And yes, bring it back to a more loving place, a more tolerant place, a place where we can all be a lot more considerate. So, have you been, here's what you need to get curious about. Have you been worshipping the wrong God? The God of tolerance, the God of repression. And maybe it's time for you to get to know Pistoffius, so that you can be in touch with your passion and shift the planet in the way that it needs to be shifted. Because here's the news. The world needs you in your greatness. It doesn't need some wishy-washy version of you that comes from repressing your passion, your power, and your drive. So Dove Baron, till next time on fullmontyleadership.com. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about what you might be pissed off enough about that you could shift the world.